Jacci Jones and welcome to my podcast, Living Life Being Human, the #1 podcast for anxiety, stress and mental health support. Don't forget to click subscribe to be notified of my latest podcast episodes. And if you get any value from this podcast, please support me by leaving a review. It really does help me out and it motivates me to keep making these podcasts. You can connect with me on social media at Jacci Jones Coaching, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel to get weekly videos all around anxiety, stress and mental health. I really hope you enjoy this episode. So welcome to this next episode of Living Life Being Human with me, Jacci Jones. And today I've got the wonderful Catherine Thomas-Humphreys. I've got that right, haven't I?
Jacci, you've got that right. You've got that right.
I don't even know how to phrase this, but the Finfluencer.
It is. It's imagine financial influencer and just squeeze them together.
Lovely, Finfluencer.
There you go. You got it fluent in it.
Yes, I've been looking at lots of stuff. So Catherine offers financial coaching for parents and families, which is very dear to my heart. She creates new, confident, positive money relationships that work for them to support what they really want and what they want and enjoy out of life, so that they can focus on what matters to them most, their families. Yeah. That's a lovely, I just think that's amazing. Kathryn is a qualified financial advisor, certified money coach. We all need a certified money coach in our lives. I'm beginning to realise that.
Certified.
She's a money blogger and a family will writer, which is unusual, I think. It's not, I don't know. There must be people that write wills, but it's not something any of us ever really contemplate. It's one of those things, I'll do it further down the line.
Yeah. I think it is bringing the family back into it, that we see money and wills as kind of individual things.
Yes.
Or even slightly external, but actually the purpose of them is usually to support or get something to our family in one way or the other. So it really is just bringing the language back in, because that's where the purpose sits for me from my personal experience. So
So Kathryn works one-to-one for financial coaching with clients. She also has a small money coaching group, and I believe you're soon to be launching a membership program.
Yeah, I am.
We can talk.
Actually, really excited about that. So
we can talk lots about that. And we met through the Women in Money Cafe, which I love. It's like loose women for financial things. Yeah. I love it. I think we originally met on Clubhouse. It was on Clubhouse, but you've kind of moved over now to maybe more on Facebook, and you've also launched a fantastic podcast yesterday. It went live and it's had just over 200 downloads already. So amazing. Really, really exciting. So, but you're not the first one to describe it as a kind of loose women for money. And that's, again, it's about bringing that humanness back into, and I think that's why we resonate with you, and vice versa. It's not about money, it's about people and life. And I think sometimes we do have a certain, belief system or values around money, and money is very serious and we should take it very serious and everything. Whereas you put a completely different slant on it, that it should just be introduced as part of our normal life, family life. Children should be aware of money and finances and how to make it work for us and all those sorts of things. So I'm so interested in anything and everything that you've got to say. So do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and say why you do what you do and how you got to be where you are today?
Yeah, so thank you for that lovely introduction. And I think the why is really important. I've heard from hearing it back, you don't often hear who you are back from someone else, that it was very much driven by a struggling young family. So I started my family very, very young. Really the odds of everything was kind of stacked against. I couldn't have chosen a harder path if somebody had said, take the hard path, which one do you want? Yeah. But I absolutely loved my family. I loved being a mom. I loved being a young mom. I had a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, but it was kind of not underpinned by a kind of financial worry. Yeah. So for all the hard work, it's when you're worried about making the end of the month, it distracts you from everything. And it means that that really great family time you could be having is there's just this little anxiety in the back, just ruining it for you, really. Now, on the one hand, there's some brilliantly creative opportunities. You get to, what's that saying? Necessity is the mother of all invention. When you've got nothing, you really do get kind of creative and involved with it. But I always wanted to change that. And I think I came from a background that was very scarcity. It was not poor, but there was never any meat on the bones. And the idea was that we worked hard, you had what you had, you were grateful for it. And it was like it was this fixed belief that this was an unchangeable state of affairs. But I didn't really like that. I thought, hang on a second, I don't believe this. I'm not buying this one.
Well done you for challenging it.
That is the key, and that is the key. And that, I mean, you asked why the business was called Finfluencer, and that's why every single one of us can influence and change it. And I find that really empowering. And that's when I'm coaching, don't have your answers for you, but I can help you find your answers for you to make that change. And when you really do believe that you can change it, and that's not to say that you're to blame for it being as it was, because that's just a belief running out in the background, but challenging it, you've got that power, and that's the bit where you can play. So it kind of changed. My finances for me were about having the family that I wanted, and not about being rich, not about these other kind of messages we get about what money is. So I set out to change it, and I did successfully. And then through that journey, I thought, actually, a lot of people seem to ask me, how have you done that? Why are you doing that? So I retrained originally as a financial advisor, which I love. I love advising, but it's very much you and I sit there and I've got the answers and the solutions. And to me, that's not empowering enough. My lesson or my learning was I had that power. So the coaching was the natural next step. And that's the bit that I love. That's where the transformation comes. And I love it when they have their aha moments and you see change. So
there's nothing like a good aha moment. See, I think this is the thing that really interests me. The financial advisor bit, I get that. But the financial coaching, is that a new thing? Or have I not heard about it? Because I think it's amazing.
It's definitely a growing area. I think you probably see this as well, that coaching generally is as a business or as an opportunity, or there's more of us recognizing that even at all those stages of our life, I still get coached. We
Mentors,
still need that.
Coaches, all the time, supervision.
You're never going to see it yourself until someone just gives you the question you need to ask yourself, and then you can. So I think there's been a greater realization that we need coaching. And then I think the advice industry recognized that this is quite factual. We needed more soft skills, more relationships, and there's been a massive movement, even not named coaching, in terms of really creating a positive advice industry, which looks at people and their plans and their dreams and their time rather than the product that's at the end of it. So then alongside that, I think there was the blend of here's the coaching, here's the advice. And I think one of the key things is, and I see this every single time, 100% with my clients, is you're there talking about their money relationship or how they are with money, but the impact that has on their own relationship with themselves, with partners, and back to family, which is the heart of what I do, it ripples all the way through. So it really is a relationship. So it's definitely coaching first, and I think it starts with the money and then ripples out from there.
So you touched on some really amazing things then. I was literally writing the odd words down because I'm menopausal, so I forget lots of things. So there was something that you said about blame and shame, and that really resonates with me, that, sometimes what prevents us from reaching out or getting support and advice is the fear of judgment and that blame and shame. And around finances, it's a real touchy for somebody to open themselves up and feel quite vulnerable about maybe the situation that they found themselves in. Not saying that any of us coaches do the blame and shame, but they blame themselves and feel a lot of shame around whether they've got into debt, whether they can't afford to buy their children certain things. It's a real bleak place for some people.
It is, and I'm glad you're mentioning it, because it's the button, it's the thing that makes me really kind of heckle, because I mean, I think there's two things. Firstly, there's a blame, and then there's the shame. So I'm just going to stick to my story because I know it, rather than pull an example in. Is when I was raising my first one, the shame wasn't about the money, it was about my situation, but I didn't recognize that at the time. And that then filtered over into, it was my fault, I'd created this, and therefore I was to blame for this. And you see it at both ends of the spectrum with money. We often assume it's going to be someone who's ashamed that they've not done well with money, or they haven't got enough. But we see a lot of shaming on the other extreme, which is someone might share a great success, that they've bought a car that was important to them, that they worked for, that was valuable to them for a reason, and we have to tear them down for it. So you see it at both ends. And I don't think it's anyone else's business, because at the end of the day, no, I know you, it isn't. It's my money and my values and my dreams and my goals, and it is a totally personal relationship that we have with it and what we do with it. So when I'm coaching, I'm so non-judgmental, I surprise myself. There's not anything anyone will say to me that will make me think anything of judgment. I just think with shame, more so than guilt, it feels very integral, very much like I am, rather than I feel bad. And I think therefore it's a much, I don't want to use, I'm trying to think of the word to use, I don't want to use crippling, but it has a bigger impact, I think, because it feels very much like I am this thing. And when we realise that we're not that thing, that's very, very freeing.
And I love the freeing part of it, you know. And for me, with all my work, the fundamental thing is awareness. Because once we're aware of something, then we have a choice whether we want to change it. Is it working for me or is it not? Sorry. So I love the way that you talk about, you know, the work that you do. You're obviously passionate. I've got a right tickle.
It's okay.
Talk about success.
Success. Yeah. Wow. That's a great word, because what does it mean? And I think it comes back to, it's our own, it's very, very personal. Now, my idea of success is going to be vastly different to yours and to the client in front of either of us. And I think the work is, exactly as you said, is what is awareness to us. I think we chase things, even we think maybe we want this as success because we never questioned it. Maybe we saw a successful parent or a sibling or had that experience as a child, and we think that's what we need to be. Or we don't have an internal sense of being really valuable, and we attribute this external thing, well, I might feel more valuable or more deserving, and therefore we're chasing that success. So I think it's really coming right back down to ourselves as individuals and saying what's valuable to me, what would make me feel successful. So for me, success is actually facilitating someone else's. And it's about, I don't want to get to 80 years rocking in my chair thinking I didn't give back this thing I think I'm meant to be giving back. So if I've not achieved my why, then that to me is not a success. So that's where mine lies. Financially, that's going to come alongside with it, because I'm not a charity. Not. That was my own thing. I worked for many years thinking that I was meant to do all this stuff for free, that because it had a higher purpose, that therefore it wasn't worthy of being paid. But that just reflected me thinking I wasn't worthy of being given to. So as soon as you start peeling back, you realize it's about how we feel about ourselves and what we define as ourselves. So can I ask what success is for you, Jackie?
Very similar to what you're saying. There's mindset fits in a lot with me. The things I inherited from my family have a lot to do with what success is, and whether success is something that we should aim for. There's a bit of shame around success for me, which I find really interesting. You know, I don't know, keeping up with the Joneses, or, you know, what is success? And if we get it, should we then hide it? And, you know, all those sorts of things. I think my family had a lot of jealousy around successful people, or that's my belief around it. You know, that it was kind of like, people like us won't be successful. People like us never have money.
Yeah.
And you touched on something earlier on about scarcity. And I did inherit, particularly my mum's fear of losing it all. She was one of these people that, you know, you didn't buy anything on credit. It was always, you saved up for it, you bought what you could, and anything extra was hidden under the bed, you know, metaphorically,
Yes.
for a rainy day. There was always going to be a rainy day. So we had to scrimp and save and plan for that doom and gloom that was inevitable. And it shadowed a lot of my, you know, mindset around success, money. You know, how much money should I have in order to be okay to lose it all? And just a really weird mentality around money.
I mean, it's interesting seeing it from kind of the two sides, is that the scarcity, and you can almost feel the fear that your grandma would have had with that, that doom and gloom was, and therefore we have a fear of losing the money, a fear of that situation, but that then pervades into fear in and around finance, which, and you never get the same behavior. So I've seen it with one lady I'm working with, where the fear was so much that she almost obsessively budgeted, and then you see it in someone else, and the fear is so much they never look. So you can have very different behaviors, but kind of driven by that same fear. And then with the success, what belief, what internal cap have we set for ourselves? So what's the amount that feels right, where we still feel like we're with that group that we've come from, so with the family, people like us. Because if you are successful, then by default you're not people like us anymore. So you've got to move away from
belonging. Is quite a powerful need in all of us.
Massively. And I think as well as the more we do, it's not like, oh, now I'm comfortable with it, there's a great big success. I think it's almost like we level up. So we just almost have to grow into, can I be a little bit more successful? Which boundary is now comfortable? And then when we're at that boundary, explore it a little bit more. Well, okay, what's comfortable now? There was a term we used, this is an extremely random fact, but I used to be a yoga teacher. Somewhere along that journey, I skipped that. And one of the terms we used was playing the edge. So as you're expanding or growing physically, or flexibility or strength, or even mentally, you've got to be on that cusp of where the right place for you to expand, but without being broken or too small and not growing.
I love that. I don't know how, but particularly my eldest has not inherited a lot of our family values and beliefs. His attitude towards money, success, mindset and everything is quite unique. And he often says to me, you know, if I gave you £10,000, what would you do with it? And it's that mindset of having that money and freeing you up. But how do I get that money in the first place? And then once you get to that amount, well, I'm going to put it in the bank and save it. And he's like, you know, you can't have that mindset, Mum. Once you've got that money, you've got to invest it back in. You've got to make it grow for you. You've got to make it work. Not just stick it in a bank account and admire the zeros on the end of it.
They are just zeros, aren't they?
He doesn't have a fear of losing it, because his mindset is, I'll just make it again.
So I think my siblings very close. So we had exactly the same upbringing. And yet each one of us is very, very different, because I think when we're presented with that choice as a child, and most of those beliefs are very young children, we interpret it based on what we know at the time. And I think our first choice is, do we do the same, or do we rebel it and do something completely different? So we start with that kind of bipolar, that's probably the wrong term, choice. And then we refine that, and they all overlap, and there's lots and lots of those decisions coming along. So it could be that he's looked and thought, hang on a second, I'm a bit like me, like I'm not
I don't want to do that.
No, I'm going to try the opposite first, and then you'll kind of swing between and find and refine it as you go. My son sounds very like yours, and I think he witnessed in our family that change from when he was young. There was the scarcity and the fear, and now he sees the other side of it. But he was of the right sort of age that he's able to reflect on both. So that's been his example. And I think my daughter as well, more inclined We moved house so many times during those kind of early years because we didn't have a choice. That her response is, I'm going to buy a house straight away and I'm going to stay and have my house. So she's trying to fulfill, I guess, I hope she's not listening. I do love you. You are listening, sweetheart.
Yeah.
To fulfill that feeling of need to be secure, to be safe, to be still, and to be in one place.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting when you start peeling back where those beliefs have come from.
100%. Yeah, and I love the fact, exactly, I talk about it an awful lot. We always have choices. And what you were saying, we either look at it and model ourselves on it, or we look at it and think, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And we do something completely opposite. And that is our choice. But often the values and beliefs are that deep rooted in us, and totally agree with what you said. It's formed at such a young age. We don't even realize that we made the choice in the first place. It's kind of like in our DNA, we just inherited it. Where the reality is we can challenge those beliefs. We can make a change. It's not that we're, I don't want to say stuck this way forevermore, but, you know, we can challenge, you know, the choices that we made when we were younger, before we had the life experience.
Yeah, and I think that's where the coaching is just that interruption, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is playing out. As I'm playing it out without the awareness, I need someone to interrupt it for me until I get to the point where, because even today, I'll hear a voice and I'll think, oh, where's that come from? Who's that? Which part of that's out? Yeah. So once it's almost like it becomes the new habit to question, to just kind of become aware that these ideas and beliefs are just running there in the background. And they're only ours. So that means that we are completely in charge of changing them. Yeah. We had this conversation the other day in the podcast, Women in Money Cafe, is that if it was a library book, I don't like this one, so I'm taking it back and I'm going to come back with another one. So I do wonder, though, whether what I'd like to see is more of this education coming in younger. So before all these patterns are really set in, like, quite firmly, surely if our children could be taught to question and taught to challenge, then we're not going to have another generation repeating the previous generation, because I'm sure my gran was yours best friend.
Yeah. And it's interesting you saying that, because I love that entrepreneurship that often isn't encouraged in schools. You have to think outside the box. I see kids as going in a funnel and they all get dumped in at the top and they're kind of forced into this certain thing to come out, at 16, 18, whatever, a certain way. And we don't always need to get a job and earn the money and put it in the bank and save for a rainy day and get a mortgage and buy a house. There are so many different ways that we can explore finances, success, money, and all those things that go with it. But exactly like you say, we don't introduce our kids to it a lot of the time.
No, I think that kind of sounding too cynical, it does look sometimes like it's a system. There's the education system, they're going to go and get jobs. Whereas to me, education isn't a system, it is that questioning and that thinking and reflecting on why. Even my youngest, so we both got big age gaps, but my youngest one's still at school. So he came back and he'd been told off at school, not told off, but told off. And because he'd asked to clarify the question. And so even a small example of a perfectly normal behaviour in a child, he's remembered that, he's taken that, and the lesson he's learned is if I ask a question, that's wrong. Whereas the lesson he's getting at home is if you have to ask the question.
Curious, yeah, definitely. Yeah. See, again, you're touching with my eldest who does break the rules. I think, he's always looked outside the box. He's ex-military, and I've never understood how he even thought about joining up, because he just does not like rules. If somebody sets a rule and says you have to do this, he will look all the way around it rather than just obeying. He's not a drone. That's what he always says. But, he looks at how he can make his money work for him. He's got this thing, I don't want to, again, probably because he saw it in my family, I don't want to work until retirement age, and then, without putting a dampener on it, die 2 weeks later with a load of money in my bank and not live my life. So, you know, his plan is to retire early. He loves traveling. You know, he contracts a lot of the time so he can work 6 months and travel for 6 months. And he's got his life set up exactly how he wants it. You know, and I've got every admiration for him that he isn't fit. He won't fit in a box. He kicks and screams if anybody tries to get him to commit to anything.
I know, I think he's probably got it right for him.
Yes.
And I think the bit that I heard you say there was he's living his life. And that is surely what the money is for. It's not to have that status, unless that's one of your particular values. It's to do what you want to do with it, so that you can focus on. Because I certainly don't want to go up until retirement age and then look back and think, oh, I wish I'd done X, Y, and Z. Like, it's always tomorrow. It's always tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's striking that balance.
He has made some sacrifices. You know, he isn't in a relationship. He's never been married. He's not got children. So he's manufactured his life so that he can live it the way that he wants. Obviously, you know, if you are in a relationship or you've got children, there are certain responsibilities that then come along with the finances. But then, is that my mindset? Is that me thinking that that's how it needs to be? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. There's a lovely example of a family. They got married, they've got 4 children, all kind of under 10, and they travel the world and they run their business online and earn it from passive income, because that was a choice that they made. And others might make the choice that actually they like the children to be there. I mean, I think one of the things that, does this annoy me? Yes, it annoys
well
me.
done. It annoys me.
It annoys me that there is a sense of, since families and since women were back out of work, like we never were before, for heaven's sake, everything's gone up. So the cost of living, childcare. So now it's like everybody's benefiting from a family, if there are 2 parents still there. And I might have wanted to make the choice not to work because I might have wanted to have been a full-time mum. That might have been a choice. So it's important to me. But financially, in the system that we're in, that wasn't really a choice. And then at the time of being single, there was definitely no choice at all, because really everything is geared toward. So I do feel sometimes like these choices, some of these choices aren't real. They're not great choices. There's either, but there is still a choice. So I think just bringing that back there, that the choice is to be creative and find another way to do it, or the choice is to make a sacrifice, or to decide that something will change on this date at this time, and these are the steps I need to do to get there. So and I think the reason I wanted to say that was to not be flippant for people who are in a financially difficult situation, because it does take a bit of planning and a bit of time for the whole thing to resolve. But the mindset and the beliefs can resolve quite quickly. So.
100%. And it is that, you know, it's stuck in a loop sometimes where you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And just, you know, if somebody would just give me X amount of money to lift me up one level, it would be a lot easier. And it's that first step that often is the most difficult one. And loved what you said then about it's not always cutting back and saving and scrimping. It's about, okay, how can I create more income, that passive income, that looking outside the box, you know, what can I do that's going to bring more money in rather than not spending it at the other end sometimes. Because for me, once I get in that budgeting, money saving mindset, I'm like Ebenezer Scrooge. I won't spend it on anything. I get obsessed with it, which is good, but then it's no way to live your life if you're not, you know, doing the nice things sometimes.
And again, it's that striking a balance. So the way I tend to I flipped it for myself, and it seems to work for the people I work with, is to move away from this idea of budget, because the very nature of it is very scarce and controlling. That's not to say like reckless abandon, but let's flip it into, well, okay, I now have to make choices about what I'm spending. I've got choices now. So instead of going on a like money diet where I'm not allowed the biscuits, I know at 2 a.m. I'm going down into the kitchen to eat, which is your emotional shopper, I suppose. You're now saying, well, I'm going to make a choice. So I'm going to make a choice for this, but not for this. And then how do I make a choice? Well, what's important to me? What's important to my family? And how are we going to shape that so at least the spending and the choosing feels less scarce, because it does suggest that there is money to spend. So I think sometimes just switching exactly the same action, but into more of an open, and I know I use these words a lot, freeing and open, but I think if we can bring that feeling around money and take away that fear and the constraint, then that in itself does create quite a big shift.
Yeah. And I love it. I've been following the things that you've been doing for quite a while now, and I love a lot of the hints and tips that you give, that when you see it written down or I hear you saying it, it's like, duh, why did I not think of that? That sounds like a relatively easy thing to do. My mindset is anything around finances and money is going to be really difficult. It's going to be hard, and often it's not, to just make small changes that build up into a big change.
Yeah, and I found that was a lesson that I had to learn, that I wanted to impart everything, all these lessons. And then I thought, actually, going back 20 years ago, I only needed one or two of the things to get started, and it wasn't so overwhelming.
Yes.
So yeah, I think in our keenness to kind of share everything, sometimes there's too much information. So how can we really simplify that and strip that down? I think as well, and this I really do sound cynical today, I apologize. I think there is a deliberateness, I don't know who it is, that we wrap finance and money up in very complex language, and we make it seem like, I want to break down this boundary of there's the haves and have-nots, because I think that's totally wrong, but there is this kind of myth perpetuating that some of us have and some of us don't, and as long as we all go along believing that, then those that have are fine. I don't think that should be allowed to continue from 2021 onwards. So how can we strip that language back? How can we strip the activities back, just to make them really simple, straightforward, and not feel and trigger those feelings of fear and anxiety and stress? So thank you for that feedback. Any in particular? I'm going to put you on the spot. I love this.
Well, I just love what you're saying, though, because that resonates so much with me and my background, and being a psychotherapist, that one of the things that prevented me from doing this job much earlier was the use of big words, and constantly feeling lower status than those people that could use big words. And it was only when I started to be really authentic with myself that I didn't need to be that sort of a psychotherapist. I could be my sort of psychotherapist, and certain people would relate to that, others wouldn't. If they want to go to a room where there's somebody sat in a suit and it's all very professional looking, that's fine. But there will be those people like me that are quite daunted by being around that. So I love the fact that you're saying, we need to unwrap this mystical thing called finances and put it in simple terms for people like me to understand. And I think that's why I really resonate with you and all the ladies in the the Money Cafe. It just really, it is. I love it. I love the work that you do. I've got every admiration for you. So thank you. So I noticed something. I was listening to one of I don't know if it was a podcast or a little snippet that you were doing on Facebook about, a challenge for making, was it £100? That was the challenge that you set, and how you could do that. And some of the things were so easy. Check what subscriptions you've signed up to that you're no longer using, and
they are again. I think they're easy to do, and there is an immediate reward, and you're kind of more inclined to go and maybe take on a slightly chunkier task or a different task. So it kind of gets you in. So that challenge was set in the Facebook community. So just for those who are listening, it's called the Women in Money Cafe, and it's on the Facebook group, but we just launched the podcast that goes alongside it. We did an episode on it as well. And it is things, as you've said, like, especially this time of year, we've got Christmas coming up. I think it's a really nice time to declutter, because that's, again, it's making space. It's making space in your bank account, and it's
in your head.
And in your head. And then from that space, there's room for new. I think a secondary tip from that, so if anybody is going through and checking their subscriptions, is I've just made £20 saving on the fitness app or the streaming service I'm not using. but I've not enjoyed it all year, so I'll put it in my savings. So the secondary step from there would be, well, what can I do with this instead? Or, well, what would be valuable for me to spend on that? You know, it's truly, it might be another subscription next year that maybe you do use, but I don't know. So it's not just cancelling it and that restricting, that budgeting, it's the kind of redeploying and spending in line with your intentions and your values. So yeah, we've got loads of ideas. The team of experts in the cafe, which is myself and Julie Flynn, co-host the podcast, and we've got Sitsi, Michelle, and Emily. So we're in the group, and we like sharing, and to us that is a giving back that's important to us.
Just to let everybody know that's listening or watching, all the links will be put in the show notes. I'll put the links for the podcast and the Facebook group and anything else that I can find that relates to you.
More merrier.
Seriously, I just think everybody should just, even if you're just listening to the podcast, traveling to work or while you're doing the washing up or whatever,
or the dog walk,
will filter through.
They do.
That aha moment, that little spark that you were talking about earlier on, that you know is the start of the journey. Wherever you are on that path, you know, we can make a choice and a decision. Yeah,
we can. And I think the part that perhaps doesn't come out enough is it's not just about people who haven't got money. A lot of my clients have money, they have really good incomes, but with a different set of limiting beliefs, it kind of runs through their fingers and they're not seeing the outcome. So they've got the work and the income, so they're quite open to that, but then they either don't feel, you touched on earlier about this idea of success, perhaps there's a sense that they shouldn't have it, or they're not allowed it, or they give it away and it's gone. So at any point in that journey, it doesn't matter whether there's money there to show or not, there is room for coaching, and you still got the same aha moments, regardless of the number of zeros that are on the end of that.
And I think that's a really good point, because, you know, I have known people who have been quite successful, but are very frivolous with it to get them back to a level that they feel comfortable with. You mentioned it earlier on, and I talk about it a lot. What's your number? At what point do things start to get uncomfortable? You know, for me as a psychotherapist, it's, you know, how many people in a room can you be before you start to feel uncomfortable? You know, if they suffer from social anxiety or, you know, whatever it is, we all have a number that's a tipping point for us. So somebody around success and money, you know, if their tipping point is having, I don't know, £50,000 in the bank and it goes over it, you know, unconsciously they will filter it off. They will get rid of that money that's making them feel uncomfortable.
To bring them back to staying where it's familiar, or they don't feel they deserve it. So okay, they may have earned it because there was a sense of needing to be successful in a job title, but somehow their sense of self-worth or deserving, it doesn't resonate with that. So they can take the job, but they can't necessarily take the money. So I was just thinking about one client who has an emotional spending on and it's the same whether he was spending £1,000, £100 or £10, or in his case, £100,000. It's the same belief. It's just there's extra zeros on the end. So it doesn't matter where or how much money, if you're not seeing it line up with what's valuable to you, you're not seeing the rewards and living the life that you want, then that's a really great trigger to go and find a coach that's going to hear you and listen to you and ask you the questions that you need to ask yourself.
And again, I think it's brilliant. We are all unique, and we've all got our own life scripts, our own life experience. So you know, what's right for one isn't going to be right for the other. So I totally agree, you know, reach out and get somebody. So you work with people on a one-to-one basis, as in a coaching. You also run small group.
I do. So the group program this year, that one's closed. So as we're coming through to December, I've got a few in the pipeline for January and into April, I think. So I tend to run one which is very mindset based. So it doesn't matter where you are on your journey, you know that there's a habit that isn't working in line with you. So how can we undo that? I'm actually doing one with my daughter, which I'm quite excited about, because going back to the house, she's a mortgage advisor. And I think what's nice in this is that we're like the two sides of the same story, money story wise. So it is helping young people go from not having a house to buying their first home and all the steps involved, coaching, saving, and that mortgage process. So that will be coming out sort of in January. So that's going to be a really exciting one. And then I'm launching a membership, and you've got a membership. So yeah, we can swap tips afterwards. But I think it comes back to the why is that I love one-to-one coaching, but it does come at a price, which is absolutely appropriate. But it does mean that I can't necessarily reach back and help 20-year-old version. So I feel the membership gives people access to the coaching information, the tips, in a way that's affordable and accessible to them. Okay, it may take longer because you're going to sort of work through the self-serve yourself, but then because you'll get little gains and you'll get changes, you'll start to see the impact earlier on, and then at that point you might want to try a group coaching program or even a one-to-one. So I'm quite excited about that. I feel like I've got a ghost coming in, and I have. It's a random cup of tea. Look.
Oh, lovely. We should all have a ghost like that.
Yeah, I like my ghost. It's actually an espresso chocolatino.
Oh, lovely, lovely. No, what you were saying then about the membership is exactly why I set one up, you know, because working one-to-one, obviously, you know, that hour of my time has to have a charge to it, because like everybody else, I've got a mortgage and bills to pay and everything else. But that 1 hour in a membership can feed a lot more people, you know, at a lower cost, which is why I chose to do that as well. So have you got a launch date for the membership? Are we
January?
Okay. Okay.
Shall I pick a date? I want it ready for New Year. I know that not everyone, and yourself included, is a big New Year's resolution fan, and I'm not generally, but I think other people look, and even if so I think to not be there at a time that people are looking for the help.
Yeah.
So ideally January, certainly the first week in January, it should be up and running in a form or another, but I will be posting on my Instagram as I go. So it will be kind of broken down into little videos, worksheets, tasks, things to consider. And that combination, which I think is really key, I don't know why I didn't say it before, of matching the mindset work alongside the practical skills. Yeah. So you could do all the mindset work and still not know what to do with your money, which is you could do the practical stuff and still not shift the limiting beliefs. So I think they absolutely come hand in hand. So you'll get sort of access to both of those, along with goal settings and some accountability. Not quite sure whether I'm buddying up or whether so some what should we say, blurred areas.
That's fine. We like a bit of blurred areas. Yeah.
Feedback what you want. Tell me what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the best way of running a membership. I often say to my members, right, we've got a topic for this month. What do you want me to do the next month? Because it's going to be relevant to them. I can throw anything at them. If it's not going to be relevant, they're not going to use it. So yeah, it's I like pivoting with my stuff. So thank you so much for being here, Kathryn. I will put everything in the show notes so that people can find out when you are launching. They can check over on your website, Instagram, Facebook. You're all over the place, which I love.
Thank you.
Easy access. So the last thing I usually like to say on these podcasts is if you could, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, let me just have a think. I would probably tell her what she wanted to hear, which was that she was good enough, that there were, you know, she didn't need to be anything else other than she was. So, and that's all. And also, don't worry, you'll get there.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I often think that. I wish I had somebody to tell my younger self what I wanted to, you know, how different would things have been if somebody had told me what I knew was already there in the first place, type of thing. So it would, although I'm not sure I'd have, you miss the lessons, I guess, if you know, don't you? I think just sometimes you just need to go back and give our younger self the hug that they didn't have at the time. We're here because of them, and it's so a little bit of, in your theme for the month, a little bit of gratitude to our younger self too. I'm all up for gratitude, definitely. So thank you so much, and I will have you back once the membership is up and running.
Thanks,
so you can come back and talk about that. Congratulations on the podcast launch and everything that you're doing, and just keep doing it.
I will. And you are on our New Year podcast. So for those who are listening and want to hear the other side of your story, the Women and Money podcast cafe, Women and Money Cafe podcast, has the lovely Jacci in for the new year.
Yeah, I've got the first one in 2022. I'm looking forward to listening to it, but to hear you talking with somebody else on the podcast. So thank you so much, Kathryn, and we'll catch up again very soon.
All right. Thanks very much, Jacci.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Living Life Being Human podcast. Please follow on Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. And if you got value from this episode, please share it so that others can get value from it too. You can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at Jacci Jones Coaching, or you can visit my website, jaccijones.co.uk, and click on the free resources tab at the top of the page for all my free and paid support. Thanks for listening.